Okay, good morning. My name is Curtis Campbell, Senior Marketing Manager with the Hughes Digital Media Solutions Group. Super excited that you've joined us this morning for our webinar entitled Digital Signage for Best Practices for Digital Signage in Government. I'm joined here by a few of my colleagues as well as obviously many of you, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy morning and your busy schedule to join us. We feel that the content will definitely be valuable and pertinent. I am joined here also by Dan Brown, who's a Senior Communications Specialist on the Hughes marketing team as well. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning.
And we'd like to go ahead and get started. Hopefully everyone can see their screens. If you cannot, please obviously send a message. For housekeeping items, please note that everyone is automatically put on mute. So if you have a question, please do enter it into the chat log in the bottom bottom corner of your screen, and we will do our best to get to your questions as they come up. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, good morning, and thank you for joining this morning's webinar. We'd like to kick things off this morning with an interactive Q&A session regarding a specific use case for a government-funded medical facility. Unfortunately, our guest had an unexpected conflict which prevented her from joining us. However, in her place, we were very fortunate to have Rick Whiteside, who is a systems and solution engineer on the Hughes team with more than 20 years of experience, who is specifically focused on the government sector and will help shed some light on best practices from actual digital signage deployments. So, Rick, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, as you can see, there's just a snapshot of our guest this morning. Again, his name is Rick Whiteside, a systems and solution engineer. So, we're going to go through and just have a somewhat informal conversation between myself and Rick. He has had the opportunity to work very directly with a very big government contract that's, as I mentioned, a government-funded medical facility. So he has some great experience, which I think will definitely benefit those of you in attendance. So with that, I'm just going to go through he and I are just going to go through a couple of questions and go from there. And then, of course, we're going to tie things off at the end with some more information presented to us by Dan. So again, Rick, if you would give us a little bit of insight on how agency-wide employee communication an announcement occurred prior to your digital signage rollout.
Okay, let's get started. Communication and medical media groups would create poster boards and then distribute them at predetermined locations throughout their facilities. This was effective, but it was very time-consuming to create and distribute throughout large facilities because these updates often took weeks. However, once the facilities moved to digital signage, they began to keep information dynamic and relevant and started making updates daily. Also, they began to realize real cost savings.
That's definitely a trend that we're seeing, and certainly appreciate your feedback, especially on the cost savings and keeping that information dynamic. So appreciate your insight on that. So the next question I have for you is, if you would, give us and maybe those in attendance a little bit of insight as to what your digital signage network looks like, whether it's the number of screens or key locations. If you would, just give us a little bit of insight on that.
Sure. Many of the facilities we have developed signage in are using wayfinding screens inside the entrances and by the elevators. In addition, digital signage is being used in waiting rooms for both information and entertainment, as well as now serving applications. The digital signage screens are both staff and patient facing. Depending on the location, each screen can play different content so that relevant information can be displayed, including now serving, weather, news, social media, and public service announcements.
Perfect. Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's, again, very, that's great insight, so thank you. So you did mention just briefly that you've got some different types of digital signage as well as where their strategic locations are. But if you could, do you have both employee-facing and visitor-facing, or do you have both, or what does it look like? Yeah, and also, what are some of the differences between staff and what are some of the differences between staff and patients?
Content?
Yeah, staff and patients content.
So let me get into that a little bit. So for patients and visitors, the Wayfinding solution and the Now Serving solution, which can be paired with live TV, are used in high traffic areas and waiting rooms to provide important information and updates. The staff-facing screens provide human resource updates and announcements, upcoming events, training, and other important information. Some information crosses over and is made available to both staff and patients, such as emergency broadcasts. Digital signs can now warn of fire, weather, active shooter, and other emergency events, all from a smart device. They provide important information on what to do and where to go. One example I ran into was we've seen as severe weather approached, the signs were immediately updated to instruct staff and visitors to find an interior room without windows to wait out the event.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. Definitely can see the benefit of that, especially with these large facilities where there's a lot of different things going on at the same time. So that's definitely very interesting. Okay, so you know what? Really, I do want to keep this pretty informal, but I do have a couple other burning questions for you that I definitely think will be beneficial to those in attendance. So, how, in your mind, is digital signage enhancing the communication and the strategy and communication across the agency?
Great question. Long story short, they are finding that communication is more fluid, communication more impactful, and people, whether they are patients, visitors, staff, physicians, or administrators, are able to get access to the information in real time through visually engaging screens. The administration is also able to tie a strong ROI to the screens versus the hard costs associated with printing and distributing poster board. Additionally, morale has increased because visitors and patients are able to see real-time relevant information.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so that's great. That's definitely some great insight. I certainly appreciate it. If you could also, could you please give us just a little bit more insight about maybe some best practices for generating or creating content?
Sure. While each facility is different, we found that the most effective strategy was to start by listening to the intended audience. We asked them what they felt about what was missing from the static signs. Additionally, we began to deploy our digital signage. We continually sought feedback to ensure that we put the right content on the right screens at the right time. We worked with each department to gather the important information to display. We then took that information, put it in a visual form, and then added it to a scheduled playlist. Doing so ensured that the right messages played at the right time to the right people.
Yeah, that's definitely a trend that we're seeing in the industry because you know, information is king, especially in the both the government and in the public sector. So I certainly appreciate your insight, especially as we got an opportunity to learn a little bit more about your both patient, visitor, and staff-facing screens. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan a little bit, and he's going to go through a couple of slides on the remainder of our presentation, discussing some more best practices as well as some information about some of the examples of digital signage in government. So Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Curtis. Thank you, Rick. I appreciate, Rick, you jumping on with us to give us some insight on how some of our customers are using this technology to better their communications efforts. As they alluded to, I'm the government communications and marketing here at Hughes, and so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the content that you would really want to consider for your digital signage screens, at least ahead of time before deploying, before procuring, before going out and buying something. There are some key questions that you really want to start to ask yourself before you start diving in and evaluating providers for that. Okay, so some system considerations that we think you should really take into account as you start to evaluate what's out there. Start with user requirements. You want to make sure that the providers can include all forms of multimedia on your systems. That includes video, photos. One thing to take into consideration is sound. All right, if you're going to do a video and your screen is in sort of a noisy lobby area, are your viewers going to be able to hear the content? If not, you might want to consider something that enables closed caption or subtitles, something of that nature. It must be, accessible anytime, any place, on any device. There are some solutions out there that sort of try to fit everyone into one mold, but we understand that different users require different applications, and there are different reasons to deploy these screens. So you want to make sure that there's, the possibility to view this content anytime someone desires to. So that doesn't mean they have to walk down the hall to go see the screen. You should think about having access to that content from any sort of browser or application. And thirdly, it's got to be easy to use. As with any application, software, or technology, if it's too burdensome for the user to use, it's going to be useless because they're not going to use it. So you want something that's going to be intuitive, something that comes with some training and resources to help everyone get the most out of this technology. From a management standpoint and overseeing the content, you're going to want something that is obviously affordable. Government budgets, they're not getting any bigger today. I think we all know that. You want something that's scalable, right? So maybe you're thinking you just want to dip your toes into the water, see how it works, do a couple of screens here, and then see if you can scale it up if it turns out to be a good technology and heavily used within your offices. And something that's going to be reliable. You're going to want a provider that has a proven history. Obviously, past performance is always key in government procurement. So you're going to want somebody that's not new to the game, somebody that's got proven customers that can vouch for the provider, giving a system that is always on, always working. If something does break down, as any technology does, that they're going to be there to come and fix it and make it right again. You're also going to want to think about reporting and analytics, right? So you put these screens up in your locations. Is that the end of the day? You wipe your hands, you're done? Well, no. There are some applications with digital signage that allow you to report back what feedback you're going to get from your viewers. Are they happy with the content? Is it missing something? You're going to want to get that feedback so that you keep the content on those screens relevant for all the eyes that are going to be on there. So you want to consider having a provider that gives you the most feedback for your system, because again, if you're putting out content there that no one's going to look at, this is going to be a big waste of money. And again, easy to use, easy to administer. You want, you're probably not going to be able to go out there and hire somebody new dedicated to creating and managing the content for these screens. Most likely, in a lot of cases, as I mentioned before, budgets aren't getting much bigger. This is going to be a responsibility that is added to somebody's plate. Now, that said, if you have a system that's easy to use and you have a team effort developing the content, it won't be such a burden on that person or team to take this on. Because if you have something that does 90% of the work, all you have to do is get in there and orchestrate it, then everyone's life is easier. Curtis, do you have anything? Did I miss anything there?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, no, I certainly didn't miss anything. That's a great insight. The only thing I would on your very last point there, when you're talking about must be easy to administer, for those who are considering digital signage, I would strongly recommend that you, take a good hard look at something that might offer a cloud-based CMS. And what I mean by that is cloud-based, content management system. And what I mean by that, to clarify, is look for something that enables you to not have to have maybe a server or something there on site. There's a lot of providers out there that allow that cloud-based CMS. That's just going to ultimately make it even easier for you guys to administer on your end as well, because that's definitely as Dan very clearly and clearly stated, budgets aren't getting any bigger, so we need to be able to obviously make this as easy on you as possible. So great point, and yeah. So no, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. You don't, this could be, you know, if you have the cloud-based system there, then that's, again, one less thing that IT has to dive into, really. I mean, I'm sure obviously they'll get involved, but it'll be one less thing for those guys to manage. So, yeah, good point there. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about creating engagement with your audiences. So, you know, the purpose of digital signage, any digital signage, is communication. You want to get a message out to the audience. As Rick alluded to earlier, you know, the days of, you know, cork bulletin boards and posters, I mean, that's, we're talking the age of the dinosaurs now, all right? Everything is on screens. Everyone wants that instant information now. And so those posters are really going to be competing with the handheld devices, the tablets, the phones. No one's going to look up at a bulletin board. It's messy. It's got, you know, you got, you know, 30, you know, tacked messages on there, all competing for attention. No one's going to look at it, right? So you put these screens up there and you create compelling content that then competes with the handheld devices. I'm walking through my lobby here at my office, and we have the screens in our lobby. I know I put my phone down at the side, and I look up at the screen to see what's going on. Again, that's sort of, you know, when you have the compelling content up there, it just starts to become almost routine. When I walk in the morning, I stop, I look at the screen, I see what's going on, and then I continue to the elevator bank. And so when you think about the communication, you want to consider who you're communicating to, obviously. Are you communicating to visitors? Are you communicating to students? Are you communicating to employees? These are the things you want to take into consideration as you look into implementing a digital signage solution. Education, you want to educate your audience, whether it's training your employees, whether it's you're a DMV and you have customers coming in and you can have a screen that sort of gives them instructions. You're here for a new license? Okay, go see desk A to check in. You're here to pay a ticket, you know, go you know, to the right at this location. These are the sort of things that you can use digital signage for, and things that you should really take into consideration, because you can, the applications for this technology, I mean, it's almost never ending. So, you know, the education factor is something you want to consider, and how you can use that to supplement educating your audiences with the messaging that you're coming up with. And obviously, educating, communicating is all about the information. What's going on around us? What's happening this week? What's happening next month? These are the items that you can educate your audiences with and really disseminate this information in a much more efficient manner, rather than, again, the posters, the signs. These are things that take time to create, put up. You know, if you got a nice, clean interface with a digital signage system, you can convey this message much more efficiently and much wider audiences as everyone comes through your locations. So speaking of audiences, the two things we really need to consider when you're doing digital signage is who you're targeting with your information. All right, so you know, we like to break it down between employee versus visitor. And visitor could be you know, a constituent, it could be a patient, it could be you know, whatever it might be, anyone who's a non-employee. It could be a vendor coming in. It could be anybody that's not working directly for your location. And so with that audience in mind, you obviously want to customize your content to fit the appropriate audiences. All right, so when your displayed content is around your locations, you know, you're not going to have constituent information running on the screen in the break room, right? You want to be able to pair the content with the location to reach the maximum audience. And that means you want to have a system in place that allows you to do that, because not all of them do. All right, so what I'm displaying in the break room here is going to be much different than what I'm displaying in the lobby. And so when you have one system that allows you to sort of break up the content based on the screen, it helps you get that information out all the more efficiently. So to that effect, one size does not fit all. You know, you have, say you have 20 screens in your location. If you can only put the same content on all of those screens, you're really doing yourself a disservice, because you're not going to reach all your audiences. When your audience looks up and sees something irrelevant, guess what? They keep going. They stop looking. And that's, you know, you want to make that first impression when they look up and they see this new screen and they say, oh, wow, look at that. You know, I see that's going on tomorrow. I didn't even know about that. Okay, so then it's sort of like fishing. You're hooking them in, and once they see content that's pertinent to them, they keep looking, they keep engaging, and then you're really utilizing it to the fullest potential. So when you're thinking about audiences, obviously you're thinking about screen locations, right? So we're talking lobbies, we're talking break rooms, we're talking conference rooms. Any of these locations around your facility that has high traffic areas, intersections where people are coming and going, maybe convening, these are the locations where you're going to get the max exposure with who you're trying to reach with your messaging. And when it comes to the content creation, as Rick alluded to earlier, you really want to make it a team-oriented task. You want to get feedback from HR, from your communications department, from any group within there that has information that's valuable to all of your audiences. You want to engage them in maybe weekly, bi-weekly, monthly meetings to review what sort of content you can put together for your digital signage screens. And that way it sort of funnels through an administrator who gets you know, all this you know, valuable content from around your agency or department, and then they can funnel it through to the system, reaching the appropriate screens, reaching the appropriate audiences. So this is a nice quote that sort of will lead us into the employee-facing content. When employees care, they're engaged, and they use discretionary effort. In other words, they're willing to go the extra mile. So you really want something like this to get your employees engaged, excited about the things going on, because how can they get excited about something they don't know about? That's what digital signage does. It informs your employees and gets them excited about things that are coming up. You got a, you know, I know here in our office we have a fitness challenge coming up in about a month where everyone can sort of track their steps, and this is something that we can work into our digital signage. You know, we can see a leaderboard and things like that. So these are things that engage your employees and get them excited about your workplace. It's not just another 9 to 5. I'm showing up, doing my job, I'm going home. This is the sort of thing that gets them engaged, gets them excited, and you know, about the work they're doing, not just the work they're doing, but who they're working for. So this is really a sort of a nice quote to help sum that up.
Yeah, just one thing I might add to that too, Dan. That's a fantastic quote. I love that quote. There's a lot of proven studies, and we can certainly share those with you, with each attendee on the list. But you know, the power of a screen and the power of video truly is unrivaled. Anything printed will never carry the same weight as something that's in digital, visually engaging form. So, you know, as he shared this quote, that just popped into my mind. As you know, people really do go that extra mile when they really do feel like they're engaged, and what better way to engage them than through video?
That's a good point, because when you, and to that point, when you're seeing you know, maybe a flyer or something and it's text heavy, let's be honest, today's world, we're conditioned to get our information from screens now. We've got iPads, we've got smartphones, we've got smart TVs, we've got computer screens. I mean, you know, it's not to say the paper's dead, but I mean, it almost becomes ingrained in you that it's too laborsome to sit there and read through all that. I'll just, you know, I'll keep going. But when you have a screen, you got short, snappy videos and infographics and you know, images and just quick hitting quotes and information lines, then you get people engaged that want to learn more. You're sort of enticing them with a little bit of information here, then they go in and want to learn more. So that's a really good point. Thanks, Curtis.
Excellent. Okay.
So on the topic of employee engagement, the applications for digital signage are wide-reaching. We're talking training applications for one. All right, so you want a system that can double down as training supplement, right? So why just use it to convey information in a lobby when you can maybe load it up with training videos? I know here at Hughes we have annual training videos that we do at our desktop, but you know, at the same time, you can put a bunch of people, employees, into a conference room and load up training videos of the latest best practices. You know, if you've got new hires and you want to do an introductory video to welcome them and you know, sort of show them the ropes in a quick video, you know, have a video on demand feature that gives you also analytics and lets them rate the video and give feedback, so that, you know, you sort of have that almost running dialogue and keeping that content fresh. And also having the ability to have maybe agency leadership address agency-wide announcement. You know, not everyone gets that fancy press conference that makes CNN, but, you know, your agency leaders might have some important information that they just want to distribute amongst the agency. Well, if they have a robust system in place, they can then hook up a webcam and a microphone and address everyone live on all the screens throughout your facilities. We do that once a quarter here at Hughes. We have our company leadership out in Denver from EchoStar. They'll jump on for half an hour. They'll show videos of what all the different offices and around the world are doing, and it keeps everyone on the same page, on the same mission, you know, and sort of gives that feeling of intimacy with that level of leadership. So it really does open up a new world of communication possibilities when you think about it. Next, you got break room infotainment, right? So you got break rooms at a lot of your facilities. Rather than just throwing on CNN or ESPN, why not wrap that TV feed with some agency or school or whatever your location is with information about what's going on around you? So you can frame live TV with company announcements, social media feeds, you know, weather, things that are pertinent that they're going to want to know that they might not necessarily get watching just a standard, you know, television channel. So it really, again, sort of reinforces some of the information you're trying to get there, trying to reach these employees with, and gets them on their time. A cafeteria menu is another example. You walk into a McDonald's or you know, any sort of fast food or fast casual restaurant, and you're seeing these new fresh digital screens that are you know, rotating, giving you prices, special of the day. You know, it's the same. A lot of agency locations have their own cafeterias, and places like your company or agency store, you can use the same technology. And it's, again, it runs through all the same administrator that you would select to run this information. They would work with the cafeteria workers, say, what's the special today? What's coming up for the week? And then boom, you load it up, and then you keep your people hungry and coming back for more food, right? So they don't always run out for lunch. They come back, and and then you're, again, creating engagement. You got more people eating under your roof, then there you go. You got more engagement. And so internal announcements and promotions, I think we've covered that as well. You supplement any agency-wide announcements or email blast. You just reinforce that messaging on screen, getting their attention as they're walking through your facilities. So from employee engagement, we're talking now to constituent and visitor engagement. You got information dissemination. That's the name of the game, right? So you can reduce front desk lines. Where is this office? You know, who do I need to see for this? These are things that digital signage can help alleviate long lines at your front desks and give the power of information to those constituents. You can have a touch screen right there in the lobby with a wayfinding. Oh, I need to get to office 249B. How do I get there? Oh, well, here, let me look at the directory, and boom, it can give you that right off, you know, without having to engage somebody at the front desk, creating a long line and frustration, people waiting to, you know, be heard and see what they can do to get help. Updates and announcements, obviously another key message that you want to send out to your audiences that are coming to your facilities. And kiosk registration, number assignments, you know, if you're a DMV, if you're a place that has, you know, a number of people coming through to where you have to assign a number and then call them up on a board, you have a kiosk, and then you have screens up above the desk that says now serving, you know, 6B at row 8. You know, these are the things that can all be considered when you are looking into a digital signage system. If you're thinking this is something that you need, then you need to engage a provider who can meet the demands that you need. And then again, the infotainment, same with the customer or constituents. You want to keep them engaged in the waiting room, and also serving them information along with the live TV, as we talked about in the break room. Same goes for the constituent or visitor. You're just serving them the information that best fits them, not your employee, obviously. So you can complement live news or sports with your agency information.
Yeah, one thing I might add to that point was just on the point about infotainment. Obviously, you don't want to take anything away from what Dan just said, but for those agencies who are maybe a little bit concerned about providing live TV, whether in their break room or in their front or in their waiting rooms, that's just an option too for a lot of these digital signage providers. What's really critical to evaluate is, what your guests want. Do they want? Are they doing a lot of waiting? Do they want to be able to watch the news? Do they want to be able to do this? But again, you can use that same video player window. It's a standard a standard 16:9 window can be used to show, it can be used to show maybe a facility video or a training video or a patient story or something like that. It's all about your audience and who you're trying to talk to. So I would encourage you to think about that as you again evaluate a provider with regards to digital signage. So great points, Dan. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah. The customization again is key. You want somebody who can meet your needs, not somebody who's going to fit you into what they can provide. You want to dictate what your needs are and make sure they can meet them.
Okay, perfect.
So this is definitely something that's we're seeing more and more demand for, the emergency notification sort of supplement to digital signage. So, if you have a platform that allows you to access the administration platform from any device, then you really have a leg up in an emergency scenario in terms of getting the information out there, right? So sure, we have fire alarms for something like fire, but for something like a tornado, you're not going to sound a fire alarm and send everyone outside, right? So you can customize these screens so that as people are walking through, they say, oh, inclement weather, there's a tornado spotted in the area, and you can customize the message to what you need it to say from any device. And that, I think, is something that really needs to be considered in this day and age with this type of solution to help supplement any sort of emergency scenario. So you can maybe create predetermined alerts for fire, please evacuate to the meeting point, and things so that you have them when they're pre-created. It's literally a touch of the button, and boom, it pushes it out to all the screens or some of the screens or just one building or just one floor. You want to have that sort of flexibility in place so that, if you push out a fire, notice to all your screens and it's in multiple buildings, well, you're going to have a much bigger evacuation than you may have needed. So again, you want to have that ability to push it out to the designated screens and be able to do it quickly. And so with that, another custom piece is something that you want to create sort of on the fly. And you can log in and create this message based on a template that you already have and just customize the words on there. So for instance, here in the slide, you see flood in building 2 basement, avoid the area, right? So you may not have time to go back to your desk, punch this in and deploy it to the screens. You may be on your way down to fix that flood or address it or mark off the area. You can do it on your way from your smartphone, right? So these are the sort of flexibility and customization pieces that we think most agencies and government bodies should really consider as a form of best practice, because it really can give you a leg up in an emergency situation. And one more thing is it's also obviously beneficial for deaf and hard of hearing. I know, our schools growing up, we had the flashing lights to supplement fire, so that, if they couldn't hear the alarm, they would see the lights flickering and they would know, all right, there's a fire, gotta go. But in the event of something like an active shooter, there's nothing really out there. If they're in the hallway and that's going on, how are they going to know about it? If somebody in the hallway, they're running around, they see the chaos sort of happening, well, they can see the screen, they see what's going on, they get the directive, they know how to act, how to react, and what to do in such a situation. So again, just another sort of best practice that's emerging within digital signage that should definitely be considered before going out to market for it. So we're going to take a quick look at some template examples, and then we'll let everyone go here. Just to, again, give you an idea, we've talked a lot about some of these screens, some of the content that's on them. We're going to show you some real examples of what these screens might look like, how they're laid out, just to give you a good sense of what you'd be looking at with a digital signage screen with full customization. So a basic template might look something like this. Again, you can have that sort of live TV or video, whatever you want in that main window there on the upper right. And then underneath that, you can have a ticker. It can be the news. It can be a social media feed. It can be really whatever you want it to be. There are add-ins that you should be able to have, and whatever sort of information that you want to get out to your audience. It makes for a nice supplement to the live TV above it. You can throw your agency logo on there. If you have a video on demand feature, you might have a remote or a touch screen and be able to access videos there in the library. Date, time, and weather, these are things that are, just nice to know. You don't have to go on your phone and find the weather app and see what's going on. Boom, you just look up and you see what's going on today, tomorrow, maybe the 5-day. And date and time, it's always good. Oh, running late. Thanks. Guess I'll keep going. So again, social media feed. I know a lot of government agencies, schools, you name it. It's becoming a facet of everyday life. So why try and fight it? Put your agency's feed up there. It's critical information for your audiences, both employee and visitor. So it's a nice way to work that in. And again, they might have a visitor in there. Oh, I didn't know these guys were on Twitter. Well, let me go give them a follow. And boom, you get, again, increased engagement from digital signage. Here is a directory wayfinding example from the FAA. This is obviously a complex map you're looking at, so this is obviously something that could be incredibly beneficial for agencies that have large complexes or even big buildings or large campuses. You got a meeting at building 219. Well, I am here. I see I got to go down the road over there, and maybe want to even get in my car and go park on the other side. So this is something that's very beneficial. Again, it's something for visitors or maybe new employees. It helps them get familiar with where they are, where they're going, and avoids bogging down a front desk with trivial questions. If Curtis, do you want to speak to anything on this?
Yeah, I was just going to say real quickly on this. One thing to add is obviously, Dan, you definitely honed in on the point. You're going to know that, if you have a meeting, as he said, in room 219, you know where you are here, and all this stuff can be customized. You can certainly show even portions of your facility. You don't have to show the whole thing. You can have different wayfinding screens. Full-blown wayfinding solutions are going to be extremely costly. While there's still very good providers out there, oftentimes, as we've touched on a couple of times during this broadcast, budgets are not getting any bigger. So this is a way of marrying the two concepts of both wayfinding and digital signage. So without providing actual visual step-by-step guidance to a certain location, you can get a real good picture as to where things are, especially where the sign is placed into relation to where you're trying to go. The other thing also that's definitely I've seen on the roadmaps of several providers of wayfinding and digital signage solutions is the ability to say, I'm here, I need to go to room 210 or room 173 or building C or whatever. Some of the functionality we've seen is the ability to send a text message to yourself. You can simply just say, hey, text me these directions, and those directions will instantly pop over to, again, another screen. As we touched on so many times during this presentation, is the power of screens. And so you're going to get that guidance on your smartphone, and you're not going to necessarily be going through the vast expense of a full-blown wayfinding solution. So that's just something to add on to this.
Yeah, good point, good point. Yeah, another emerging sort of best practice. And again, this technology is evolving almost by the day. So, we think it's helpful to really see what's out there, what makes sense for you based on your budget, based on your needs. These are the things you want to start to consider as you look to implement a digital signage solution. So here's another example. We talked about taking a number, something like Social Security or a DMV. These are examples of high constituent traffic in their offices and a solution that can really cater to them. Another example on this template is traffic. You can obviously throw in I know we're here just outside of the DC area, and it doesn't matter where you're going, you know you're pretty much going to be sitting in traffic, but how long are you going to be sitting in that traffic? Well, you can load up a custom map and let people know, oh man, I got to be on the other side of Northeast by the afternoon. Am I going to make it in time? Well, let me give a quick look and see if I'm going to make it there. You know, these are, again, new applications emerging every day for digital signage, and you want to make sure you're getting a provider that's going to give you all the options to meet whatever needs you might have.
Yeah, one thing to add here also is just the concept of this type of content you're seeing right here, whether it's the weather or the humidity or, you know, the traffic, as Dan just talked about. You know, I wouldn't necessarily belabor trying to create that content yourself. There's a lot of content generation providers out there that have these type of feeds that you can just simply use an API to plug in and display that as a nice pretty widget here, as you see on the left side of your screen. You know, that's a critical point because, you know, screens are beautiful, but again, this is something that we probably even want to do another webinar series on, is the concept of content generation. We touched on it briefly before in the presentation, but again, content is also king. So if you're not creating a creative content, you know, what good is your screen? So with that in mind, you know, it's important to go out and evaluate those content providers. Like maybe a traffic feed or a weather feed or something like that, or if you're an airport, you want to provide a flight schedule. I mean, honestly, the sky's really the limit when it comes to this type of technology, because really, you know, people need that information. And so, as Dan touched on, you know, the traffic feed is going to be very important for maybe people that are going to traveling a distance to go to their local SSA office. So, good points.
Here's an example of a police station that might have digital signage in their offices, right? So again, you can have something facing the visitors and something that's facing your officers, right? So again, you create that sort of custom content. Here you got officer award, you know, he's honored at the banquet. You know, it's a nice feature to throw an employee up there who did a great job and give them some recognition. That's another application for this that you know, again, it rewards their hard work. It gets them more engaged and keeps them, you know, moving forward and saying, you know what, you know, I appreciate they threw out a nice message for me. You know what, let's keep this relationship going. You know, it's really a powerful but easy tool to use that really helps just reinforce that engagement amongst your internal employees. So everything else here, again, you get a traffic feature that maybe you can click on with a remote or a touch screen. You get your time, date, weather, and again, that VOD on the bottom right is something we would use as video on demand. If, again, this was an employee or officer facing screen, they could get the latest training videos, or if there's an update to a local law they need to know about. These are the things that you can use digital signage for to keep everybody informed.
Yeah, no, great points. Again, the screen that he's discussing right here has the ability to both be like internally employee-facing as well as constituent or visitor guest-facing. So,
and also, anyone looking at that trivia screen in the upper right, the answer is C, cordless phone.
Yeah, perfect.
And here's an example of a school or university. You know, we're seeing a growing number of universities and even K through 12 schools that are rolling out digital signage. It's perfect for that sort of medium. You know, you got so many events within any school or university. You want people to attend. This is an easy way to get the word out. Again, you can engage your students on social media. You can create your own custom hashtag, throw the thing up on your screens, and obviously you want a provider that may be able to help filter some of those tweets, knowing today's students might not always be the maturest. I know I wasn't. So, you know, this is, again, another useful tool to create engagement and to keep your audiences informed, whether it be teachers, professors, visitors, students. Again, you think who your audience is, where your screen's going to go, and then the content comes after. And then you have yourself a really nice formula for engagement. And here's just an example. I know we're here on the East Coast getting ready for lunch, so I'm going to leave everyone hungry on this. And just another, you got a cafeteria in your agency location, or maybe a shop or a store or something. Again, create the custom content. Most providers can give you templates to work with, and you can just load it up with whatever you want. You got your pricing, you got any specials that you can throw up there. These are the sort of dynamic pieces of content that you want your audiences to see, because ultimately it can help your business. Oh, I didn't know they offered ham and egg. I got to get me one of those. So these are sort of things that, again, you rather than have to swap out a paper menu every time at the front register there, you can have a dynamic screen that keeps everyone informed with what you offer and how much it costs and all that good stuff. So just another piece to consider.
Yeah, just a quick point to add on to that is, we talked about how budgets aren't getting any bigger, and how we never, somebody else is going to have to manage this solution just by an added responsibility on their task list. So obviously somebody could spend an entire 40-hour week managing this type of thing if they don't do it with an effective strategy. So as Dan just mentioned a minute ago, talking about adding, replacing a single flyer that's at the beginning of the cafeteria, showing what the options are. Or in this case, as you can see, there's a misspelled word where it says beagle and egg on the screen. Certainly not intentional for purposes of this presentation, but kind of to my point, if somebody were to notice a spelling error with a description or something like that, they could quickly log in, make that change, and re-update it rather than having to reprint something. So, it's one of those things that shows how truly dynamic a sign like this could be. So, just something to keep in mind. So, honestly, appreciate the time you've spent with us this morning, and appreciate those who have participated, and Rick, certainly appreciate your time. I know he's been somewhat silent for the remainder of this. We do have a couple of questions that both Dan and I will try to field. I know we've a little bit extended our window that we scheduled for this webinar, so I'll try and cut the list of questions down slightly. But bear in mind, you will get a copy of this webinar, as well as a recording, as well as a case study that was done by the group that Rick was representing this morning. And so you'll get all of that information following this webinar. So just a couple of questions that I think are pertinent to the audience here is there's a question on is there a good way for, say, small branch locations to use single screens for both customers and employees? And yes, there is definitely a way. There's several trends out in the marketplace that are enabling screens to serve two purposes or even three purposes, to be able to work with multiple audiences, simply through utilizing even a smartphone remote. So there's a URL you can go to and choose a video training, or you can choose a playlist to go from. And that information can instantly take over that screen, so that rather than having a one screen for customer facing and one screen for employee facing, you can use the same screen for both. So again, it reduces the investment from on your end, and then of course it makes the screen even more impactful because it serves multiple purposes.
Very good point. And you also want to think maybe time of day, right? So if you have a low traffic of visitors or constituents coming through, you may use that time to show more employee-focused information. And as your high traffic of visitors come through, you might swap it and schedule it to be more, public-facing information. So, yeah, there should definitely be options from any provider to give you a solution for that, definitely.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Dan. And then just another question here is how would an organization go about setting standards for content? For example, what gets posted, what gets not get posted, how often, et cetera. So, I'll take a pass at that, and Dan, if you feel like I've missed anything, feel free to add in. But really, it all depends on the audience you're trying to serve. We certainly don't want to sit here and try and tell you that we know your audience better than you. But you want to pay very close attention to your audience. So, for example, if you feel that your audience has great content that they may be capturing with a smartphone or maybe a camera, or they put some kind of written piece together, certainly go about evaluating that. See if it's going to be impactful. Pay attention to that. And so, really, what you want to do is just set those standards, clearly, and both to your constituents, your visitors, your patients. But obviously you want to make sure that things are obviously in compliance with any procedures or policies that you may have internally. And then, of course, if these solutions we've seen have the ability to filter out perhaps vulgarity or inappropriate pictures or something like that, because visitors and constituents and guests all have valuable things to say and potentially valuable things to add. So I would incorporate that into your strategy to see if there's a play for you to evaluate content from your guests. Dan, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. So I mean, one way to address that would be to set up an internal approval process. So you assign a person or a team with scheduling the content, allocating it all, and loading it up into the player system, and then maybe you have a meeting once a week to review that content for that week, or once a month, however often it needs to happen, or anytime there's a new piece of content. You want to put somebody in charge there of disseminating the content that will have a good understanding of what's appropriate, what's not, and if they have any questions, they know exactly who to go to for an approval. So it's really just working out the internal process of what works best for your organization. It's one of those things where you don't want to get too many layers of approval because it's just going to bog everything down, but you just want to make sure you get the key people involved that know what would be right, what wouldn't, might not be a good idea to post on there, and at least be able to engage the right parties to have a nice conversation to see, again, tying back to the strategy of what you're trying to communicate, whether it ties to your agency mission and goals. These are the things that you want to sort of consider as part of the content generation process. So, yeah, that's a good question.
Another question here is how do you go about balancing entertainment that might be fun but not crucial with information that might be crucial but not so fun? This is something that I think Dan and I both can speak to, and that is, this is all about how your audience, how you plan to approach your audience. As we showed just a few minutes ago, there was that little trivia question that Dan gave us a spoiler alert on as to what the answer was. You want your screens to be informative and entertaining so that people pay attention to them. The last thing you want is the people to simply just continue to ignore your screen like they would ignore a piece of paper or flyer. So, I actually read a really interesting article this morning discussing best practices for just digital signage in general. That talked about how, regardless of what you're posting, you want to make sure that the guests can disseminate what you're trying to do in less than 7 seconds. And if it's too short, you run the risk of them not being able to capture all the information, and you don't want to obviously have 50 different 7-second messages. So I would just pay attention to who you're trying to talk to, and just make sure it's relevant and entertaining content that can be dynamic and updated weekly, daily, and even hourly, so that people can remain engaged and you can continue to engage your audience.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, that's why we use the term infotainment, right? So you're getting the best of both worlds with a system like with a digital signage system. So you have the ability to inform your audience as well as entertain them. And whether that's with live TV, whether you want to put a joke up there or something funny, a comic strip, these are the things you can do to, again, drive that engagement, keep them entertained while keeping them informed. We have as some of those templates showed, you wrap the screen with the critical information and then maybe some entertaining videos, or vice versa. You can have a ticker with something more entertaining and something in the video frame that's a little bit more informative. It's just about finding the right balance for your agency or location or organization. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, that's we've extended past our window, so I think we're going to have to unfortunately cut it off here at this point, but I know that there's other questions we didn't get to. So we did take a record of who those questions came from, and we'll do our best to reach back to you as soon as possible. So again, thank you for joining us this morning. We certainly appreciate the participation both by Rick and Dan, and your insight is definitely valuable. And keep looking for emails from us. We'll be sending you pertinent information as well as a case study here coming from the agency that Rick was speaking about this morning. So again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to working with you in any capacity that we get the opportunity to do so. Thank you again, and have a great day. Bye-bye now.